Alright YouTube, I'm going to talk about car audio amplifiers, different kinds of amplifiers, how to install an amplifier, and myths about power wire and ground wire and stuff. First of all, let's talk about how to install an amplifier. You need to be familiar with 4 different cables: power wire, ground cable, turn-on lead, and RCAs. Or sometimes you can use what's called the speaker level input, but let's talk about these in order. Your power wire comes from the battery, runs through your firewall, and goes to your amplifier. You have to fuse the power wire. The amp can turn on without a fuse, but you can also, if there's a problem, can make your car catch fire. Fuse the wire near the battery with the appropriate size fuse. Your amplifier will recommend the fuse size. Use the recommended fuse size. Do not use a size that's bigger. If you're popping, say your amplifier recommends 60 amp fuses and you're popping them, don't go up to an 80. Troubleshoot to figure out if there's something actually wrong with your amplifier. Don't, use a bigger fuse. Your ground cable, good ground. You want to use a large bolt is the easiest. You can drill the hole yourself, but that's time consuming. You can use a large bolt that connects to the chassis of the vehicle. Make sure that your ring terminal is touching pure metal. I recommend using steel wool and paint thinner to get any paint and debris off of where the terminal is going to be and screw it down tight for a good ground. Good ground, better connection, better performance, everything's better. The turn-on lead wire comes from your deck, and it's what cues the amp to come on, okay? The turn-on lead wire, basically, you have that so your amplifier isn't on like all the time, okay? The turn-on lead wire is connected to the deck, and when the deck comes on, it sends a little signal down. The turn-on lead wire goes to the amp, tells the amp to cue on. When you turn off your car, the deck turns off, your amp turns off, nothing's draining your battery. Because if everything stayed on, it would drain your battery. You'd walk outside and be, shit. Yeah, we've all been there. The RCA cables come from your deck, and they send an audio signal to the amplifier, telling the amplifier what to amplify. Some people with, like, you say, a stock deck, are like they don't have RCAs, they use what's called the speaker level input. And basically you just run the speaker wires from the deck to the amplifier, and then the amplifier amplifies that signal. Basically, that works, but usually the signal is not as high quality. It's kind of stupid, in my opinion at least, although it can work. I recommend if you're going to buy an amplifier, just buy an aftermarket deck and run some RCAs. That's just a better way to do it. Alright, talk about power wire and myths surrounding it. Alright, when you buy an amplifier, look at its continuous power output rating. A lot of amplifiers, especially your budget brand amplifiers, market their peak power output. Sony Explode is very, very, very guilty of this. You see their amplifier, 1200 watt amplifier. It's peak power, okay? You see where it says 300 RMS, that's really what you're getting. RMS power is what you should be worried about. My amplifier does 1000 RMS, 2000 peak. Okay? A lot of these budget companies really tend to exaggerate the spec on their peak power as a selling point, and it works. A lot of people buy it thinking they're getting a 1200 watt amplifier. No, you're not getting a 1200 watt amplifier. But different amplifiers need different gauge cable, because say you're buying like a amp that has a very modest power rating, say 300 RMS, you can buy an 8 gauge power kit and it'll work. But if you're using like a subwoofer amplifier that does 2000 RMS, it'll turn on with the 8 gauge cable, but it can't draw the current it wants with the 8 gauge cable. And in fact, if you try to draw too much power, you can actually make the wire heat up and there'll be all kinds of problems. So a good guide is, if you're going over 500 RMS, get 4 gauge. Over 1000 RMS, go to 2 gauge. Over like 2000 RMS, go to 0 gauge. You're doing something insane like 10,000 RMS. Some people do multiple runs of 0 gauge. There are double 0 gauge or triple 0 gauge, which is insanely thick wire. But really for anybody, 0 gauge is enough. It's about that thick. Maybe I could actually get some wire. But some companies try to market their wire. They basically mark it up a lot. I've seen Rockford Fosgate power kits 4-gauge power kit going for like over $100, and it's no different. I get cable from what's called Welding Supply 4-gauge power cable. It's the same crap as your monster cable, your Tsunami power wire. There's two things you need two different kinds of power wire. There's pure copper and there's copper clad aluminum. And copper clad aluminum works, but there's more resistance in the cable. It doesn't carry the current as well. Pure copper is better, but if you get, say, a 0-gauge pure copper versus copper clad aluminum, it's better, but it'll be more expensive. As far as this oxygen-free cable, maybe that affects sound quality for speaker wire. If you can hear it, that's debatable. But for power wire, don't waste your money. Now we're going to talk about different types of amplifiers. You got your 1-channel amps, 2-channel amps, 4-channel amps, 6, 5-channel amps, lots of different kinds. Let's talk about what they do. 1-channel amp is for bass, mostly. These are amplifiers are called monoblocks, and they run subwoofers. They normally can run at a lower impedance. Some of them can run down to 1/2 of an ohm. A lot of them go down to 1 ohm. Some only go to 2, but most of them will go down to 2 or 1 ohms, depending. They are for subwoofers. You don't need a 2-channel amp if you're running two subwoofers. You don't need like a left sub and a right sub. Bass frequencies are non-directional. You don't need left bass and right bass. That's ridiculous. So if you're running 2 subs, you don't need 2 channels. You just want a 1-channel amp, and you want to wire the subs to get the right impedance to the amplifier, yada yada yada. I've made another video on this. 2-channel amp has 2 channels, left and right. Usually you use this for a set of components or full range speakers, and a lot of these amplifiers will have a low pass filter, full range, and then high pass filter. Some of these amplifiers you can bridge both channels and run a subwoofer with a 2-channel amplifier. Although if you're buying an amplifier for a sub, I really recommend a 1-channel, but there are 2-channel amplifiers that you can bridge the channels to a subwoofer. I actually would, if you buy 2-channel, I'd say get a set of components and run it with the high pass filter on. Usually it cuts out everything under 80 Hertz because your subwoofer handles that. A 4-channel amp is like a 2-channel, but obviously there's 4 channels, front, left, and right, and rear, left, and right. Pretty self-explanatory. A 5-channel amplifier works like a 4-channel, but then it has a dedicated channel for a subwoofer. It's for people who want to use one amplifier to power their entire system, and it's a pretty decent idea. However, though, you're not going to find a 5-channel amplifier that puts out a whole lot of power to a subwoofer. Usually it's maybe 200 or 300 watts to a subwoofer, and that's it. And for a lot of people, that's plenty of power. That'll be fine. But if you like a whole lot of bass, you're going to want more power than that. 6-channel amplifiers, very rare. I don't even know why you'd need one. Maybe a lot of people like a surround sound amplifier that has a center channel. But in the car, you have 4 speakers. Actually, in my car, I have it set up where all the speakers are in front. But you can do it any way you want. But that's the thing about amplifiers. Let's do a quick recap. For installing an amplifier, you need to be familiar with power wire, ground wire, turn-on lead, RCAs, and maybe speaker level input, but probably not that. For power wire, don't get fooled by the little schemes and con games a lot of companies play. Tsunami cable, monster cable, it's good cable, but you've heard of it, and you're paying for reputation and you're paying for name. I would go to a website called, I think it's weldingsupply.com. Google search welding supply. They have really nice wire. It's a lot cheaper than Tsunami or monster cable. When you get your amplifier, under 500 watts, 8 gauge. Under 1,000 watts, 4 gauge. Under 1,500 watts, under 2,000 watts, 2 gauge. Over 2,000 watts, 0 gauge. Okay? That's what you need to know. And good luck installing your amplifiers and installing your speakers. If you have any questions about what kind of system you have, send me a message. If you send me a message, though, make sure to include all the info about your system. If you have links to your equipment, please give me the link so I can look at the specs so I can help you, because I do not want anybody wasting money. And I have free time, so I can help. Good luck.